Hello and welcome to Crafting a Revolution, the podcast. My name is Katie Freeman. I'm one of your hosts. Every week, we bring you interviews with female identifying and non-binary folks who are makers of all kinds from all over the world. Today's guest is Christina Vincent. She is a fine furniture maker, woodworker, has a varied history with different types of craft, I will say, and just a really interesting journey getting into making fine furniture and what it's been like kind of growing into that just as the pandemic started. So there's definitely some maybe points in there that I think we can all relate to for sure. Before we hop into the interview with Christina, I would like to give a big shout out and thanks to the patrons over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Lee at Lee Runyon, Annette 513 Woodworks, Katie Thompson, Women of Woodworking, Kevin Lefty's Woodshop, Christy Twisted Twine, Jeremy Spees, Sammy Go Sammy Lee, Rachel Moody Makes, Bonnie, toolmomstore.com, Laura Oakley Soap Company, Brandy Studio Obey, Lee the Rainbow Carver, Ellen Little Bear Furniture, and Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you so much for your continued ongoing support on a monthly basis, helping the podcast produce the content that we do. If you would like to support the podcast in an ongoing monthly manner as well, you can head on over to patreon.com/crafting a revolution and check out the tiers over there. No matter what tier you choose, your name will get added to the list of thank yous at the start of the episode for every episode. If you would like to support the podcast and cannot commit to an ongoing monthly basis, you also have an option to do a one-time donation, or you can do it more than one time, but it doesn't hold you to a monthly schedule. Follow along with the podcast over on Instagram at Crafting a Revolution, and there's a link in bio there that you can use to get to the single time donation to help support the podcast. So, all right, let's head on into the conversation with Christina Vincent. All right, so why don't we just kind of jump right on in, and Christina, I like to start by asking my guests to introduce themselves. Would you do that for me?
Sure. I'm Christina Vincent. I'm a fine woodworker. I live on North Haven Island in Maine. I do a varied number of pieces, from chairs to wall pieces, cutting boards, earrings. I enjoy working with wood.
Okay. Oh, good. So I have to ask, how big is the island? Like population wise,
Well, so there's about 350 of us that live here year round.
Okay.
And then in the summer, there's a couple thousand.
Okay.
And I think our widest point is like 2 by like 7, 2 miles by like 7 miles, but it's long and narrow.
Gotcha. It's hard to imagine that necessarily visually in my head, that distance, but I imagine there's still a good amount of space between you all. Yes.
Everybody has their space. We have a little downtown where, it's like anyone else's cozy downtown. But we're 12 miles out to sea, only accessible by a ferry 3 times a day, and plane, or if you have your own boat. So it deters those faint of heart from wanting to live here.
This has nothing to do with what you actually do, but I have groceries. Do you have to take the ferry to get groceries, or do you have them there on the island?
There is a grocery store here on the island. It's a small grocery store. You kind of just go for general supplies when you need it. Probably like a week to 10 days, I go across and
Gotcha.
stock up. Plus, you want to see like the real world and people and things actually happening. The longest stint was the onset of COVID, and I think I didn't leave for 6 months, and I was going stir crazy because I didn't see anybody. Even like, people would actually pick up groceries and like send them out to us, and you're like, it's felt like a mini apocalypse, really. But
I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, probably the most. Right. I mean, I know that it felt somewhat like that at the start of COVID, just even for us. And we don't, like, we live in town. Iowa is a pretty rural, like, state in general. There's not like a lot of like big metropolis areas. But where we do live is where one of the 3 state universities is, and it's like the biggest university. So in general, it's like, it's decent sized, at least when school is in session. Maybe like, I think it's something like 60,000 people without college students. And then when college students come, it's like double that. So it's an okay size, but even still, it's like, I even remember thinking we live so close to our neighbors, yet I have not seen a single soul. Like for, I think it was similar, like a 6-month stint, like, because we ordered out groceries, like Instacart and stuff like that. And yeah, we weren't going anywhere. So even though I don't live in the middle of an island, I felt very much like an apocalypse as well.
So it makes me feel better knowing that other people are experiencing a little bit of that as well.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so now that I have sidetracked us, I'll go back and say, I want to know kind of what is the story of Christina from like baby Christina, like where you were born, to how you found yourself on an island making things from wood.
Okay, well, all right. I grew up in Maine. It's also in Maine.
Okay.
And went to Edward Little. It's a bigger high school in Auburn. Big into sports, big into art. And I ended up going to University of Rhode Island to study fashion design and art. I left there. Well, I graduated. I graduated and wanted to get a job, more like an outdoor apparel, because I'm definitely more of an outdoors girl than high fashion. That didn't seem to work out. I worked at an interior design company in Vermont. So I was kind of like, I did a little bit of a design work, worked with clients a little bit, but mostly I was like store operations. It didn't pay the best. I had 3 other jobs, and I was like, this cannot be why I possibly went to college. But I also loved backpacking. So while I was in university, I did a study abroad in Australia and New Zealand. And I just kind of became addicted to backpacking. So by the time I realized that I wasn't really getting anywhere in Vermont, I booked a trip to Thailand and Fiji, and I just backpacked for a while, and it was great. And then my good friend growing up, now husband, was like, hey, come to an island. It's beautiful. Of course, this was summer, so it was beautiful. And he's like, you can make a bunch of money lobstering. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a whirl. I really didn't like lobstering. I really didn't. People love it. I didn't, but that's okay. So I found myself here on an island. I really liked it. Again, nature. I just love being outdoors. And, if you like the outdoors and peace and quiet, there you go. But I needed a job. So I started working with a carpentry company here.
Okay.
And that kind of evolved. So I went from a very small carpentry company, and then I ended up working with a larger one. I became really comfortable with tools, ended up building my house. And, then I needed furniture for my house. So I dabbled in that a little bit. It was mostly with like nails and screws. You're so used to the nail gun, and why not? So it came together really quickly. Doesn't really hold together as well. The thing I didn't like about the company I was working with, I was working with all men. I was the only woman, and I did great work. They really wanted me to stay, but there was no room for further advancement, and I just wanted to be more creative, and it was okay. Most of them actually thought it was really funny when I was like, I want to build fine furniture. And they're like, okay, good luck. So I don't know if it was just me being stubborn. I ended up leaving, and I took a couple of courses at Center for Furniture Craftsmanship. It's in Rockport. It's a really great wood school. And I just started building. I also started a landscape and design company because I needed supplemental income. So I still do that. I have that company, which I work like half the year, and then half the year I do woodworking. I would like this to be more so. I mean, I love plants, love being outdoors. It's a lot of damn work.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work. And it's a different type of creating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to fully jump out of that ship just because I do enjoy being outside. Who doesn't love beautiful flowers? And, the vegetable gardens that I, get to plant and take care of, and the cut flower gardens and stuff, really great. Some of the other things, a little too much. But I was lucky enough to take the 3-month course at the Center for Furniture Craftsmanship. I think it was 2017, 2018. And that really propelled my work into the next level of fine woodworking and craftsmanship overall. And I started applying to events like Philadelphia Museum of Art and the Smithsonian, and just like bigger events, and just kind of like seeing what happened. Yes, I got in, but I also got in 2019, right before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like, okay. I mean, they've done such a great job of putting things online and still hosting the shows. And I'm hoping that this year more events, have seemed to started to continue once again.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's a whole different animal. When people get to, the furniture that I'm building is a little higher price point. It's the fine furniture. It's more of has to be your style. It has to be an investment piece. A lot of people want something custom, but they want to know what your work is like. And, you can't really do that without seeing it. And you also want to meet the person. So I've been grateful and really lucky to have a community, the summer community, and some of even the local community has been great. This winter, I'm filled with orders, so it's good. I'm completely, I'm happy and content and filled until I have to go back out and landscape. And that's been wonderful, because I've still been able to create and do the things that I love. Last winter was a little scary, just because I feel like there was this weird lull for a little while. But I was able to do other things, like create a collection of pieces that I was able to show, which in turn, I got the work for this winter. So it's kind of like ebb and flow, and that's it. So that's my story. Right now I have a small studio space. I do have a lot of great tools. I do love tools. So I'm lucky I usually buy myself a tool every year, like an investment tool. So that's been growing. That's really great. The next really big thing is I'd like to have a proper workshop, like really have my workshop with a finishing room and a storage room and, my workspace. And
Yes.
that would be great.
I think that's like
Like,
the dream for every like, woodworker, furniture maker is like that right there. Like once you get a space, then you just continue to like dream about the next biggest space.
and fill it up with more tools and more
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, first I need to like ask, because like you said, you're like the outdoors person, you love tools now and stuff. So I'm curious about the story behind fashion school and fashion design.
Well, that's an interesting little quirk. So growing up, my mom, really wanted me to be a girly girl and like makeup and cute clothes and all this stuff. And I was the cheerleader, and like that kind of was like me. And I wasn't as encouraged, like most girls, to do anything handy, like tool or, mathematics,
Right.
just something like fun and look really cute. So I was on the track of like, I love art. So being creative was encouraged, and still going to college and all of that was really encouraged. But so I liked clothes because that's kind of how I was brought up. But the outdoor component, my brother had a lot to do with that. He did a lot of like hiking and just outdoor stuff. And then he started taking me, he's 4 years older than I am. So he just started taking me with him, and I really enjoyed it. So from the beginning, with onset of actually going to University of Rhode Island to graduation, I evolved in what I wanted from it, more from like the fashion, high fashion look to more of the functional outdoor wear and, and even workwear, because, Carhartt was, beginning to get big at that point. It fit funny. It wasn't, you know what I mean? You wanted something that fits, not like a boy. You wanted it to look good, you know what I mean? Like functional. Because whenever you wear anything, you want to feel good in it. And, the better you feel with whatever you're wearing, the better you're going to do no matter what. So, anyway, I kind of evolved from that, but it didn't pan out. Life has a funny way of switching things up on us. So from fashion, I went into interior design, which the company was, it was a really fun company. The woman was a small company. She had a store in Vermont and New York and Massachusetts. And it was like fun, bright colors and just very, laid back. It wasn't stressful. It was great. So I don't have any, regrets in doing that. It wasn't, as I said, it wasn't stressful. It was a learning experience.
Right.
And I enjoyed it. It just
I'm just kind of, again, I'm curious at the, like, coming out with that, does it like fashion design and then going into interior design, just the design path, like, do you feel like you could hop into that and like have, like, how was the learning curve, I guess, of jumping into interior design from more of a fashion design background, at least schooling wise?
It wasn't too far-fetched. I mean,
Yeah.
you were the type of people, well, if I think about like high fashion and then the interior design that we were doing, I think the type of person that those two kind of correlated a little bit. Then it was like since I was in the Vermont office, it was more of these like cottagey places. So I don't think it was such a big jump. I'm glad I did it. I mean, I don't really think I had a choice, but I'm like really trying to like put this together. I think I looked at it more as an opportunity and like, because that's what ended up panning out.
Right.
So it was more like a learning opportunity. So I went in without any preconceived notions.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't really like bother me about what else I had to learn or adjust to. But I'm glad that I did, because then it put me in a space of, getting to see furniture and home
Mm-hmm.
decor, which, in hindsight, that probably helps now with like the way
Right.
that I look at things and see how, what appeals to me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's many other influences, but for being there for a couple of years, it definitely gave me a little bit more background in that, whereas I had never really immersed myself in that kind of environment before.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see that benefit. Like, I've not worked for, an interior designer, but like I had some of my pieces like on the showroom floor of like a local interior designer. And I think like just even the interactions of going in there and like seeing the spaces and then seeing like what she would procure to put on the showroom floor, like even that was influential in the sense of like, okay, like this is somebody who's kind of like, I mean, I knew her clientele was the clientele that ideally I would like to have for my pieces. And so you could watch that and like connect the dots as far as, okay, what are design trends or what makes something good versus, not necessarily something that is for everybody type thing. So
Well,
I can definitely see that.
right. Well, but I honestly think that pretty much anything across the board is for somebody. It just has to be in the right
True.
space. It certain, like my fine furniture wouldn't necessarily be so great in like a boho thing. Like, you know what I mean? It just needs to fit the space or, the environment that it's intended for.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Then the pivot from what I would say is like, to me, like, I mean, design, yes, has its hands-on aspect, but definitely not in the same regard as like lobsters and cabinet making.
Or landscaping.
Or landscaping, yes. I mean,
Well,
was it a nice, do you feel like it was a welcomed pivot into like working with your hands as much as working with your mind?
let's see. So I enjoyed the design aspect a lot and seeing how it comes together. Like, I prefer creating in this medium maybe a little bit more than others. I do like actually choosing plants for a specific site. I mean, I find that fun. That's the part of design that I enjoy. I don't necessarily want to dig it in for the rest of my life.
Right.
I prefer, this to me has a little bit more of my personality because I get to express myself through it. And as I learn, it evolves. There's, I have an idea that I want to develop, and I'm really kind of excited about that. It's a little bit more color. So hopefully we'll get into that. Well, yes. Hopefully I'll evolve into that. Just kind of as like an offshoot. I still want to do fine woodworking and pieces and everything. I find I really enjoy doing shows, going to galleries or events. I'm really excited to be part of the Smithsonian this April. And I really hope that it goes on. Just the collaboration of artists, whether it's in my same medium or just overall, you get to see what people are doing. You get to meet creative minds, and it's really inspiring. And I draw a lot from those type of events. So since COVID, it's been really challenging. You don't really get that with Zoom. You get to talk, but you don't really, as I said, you don't get to see their pieces.
Right.
It's not the same. So I am glad that I have this to fill, the time in a creative way. I'm a creative person. I don't know what I really would have done these past 2 years if I hadn't have had this in as part of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm interested. So now I have to ask about the color because you brought it up. And I'm somebody from the moment I learned you could put color that wasn't paint onto wood, I was like hooked. And so there are very few pieces that I have created since that time that don't have something on it that's like an element of color. So I'm curious about like if you're able to share some of that stuff that you're exploring.
Well, I'm not able to divulge in that. It's just going to be a little bit more fun and whimsical. But what I found myself last year, so I do a lot of inlay work. So it's working with, lighter, darker work, to show like a pattern or whatnot. But last year, as I said, when I didn't have as many orders and I was kind of in a low and it was really cold and everything just looked gray. And you're just like, I'm alone on an island. So I taught myself, like, it's not very challenging, but shaker tape weaving, and I made a few benches and some wall pieces. I really like that, just incorporating some kind of color. And I played with Danish cord as well. That wasn't, it's a tan, but it was more of a texture, like texture, color, how I can incorporate that. That's always a lot of fun. And I do want to incorporate that more when I get to, the next slot of doing my creations. As an artist, people do pieces in one solid color and it's beautiful, or one solid wood type, and it is beautiful, and they can do it so wonderfully. But sometimes that like hint of color or just something a little different, it kind of speaks to me.
Mm-hmm. Hey makers, today's episode is sponsored in part by toolmomstore.com. At toolmomstore.com, you can find any and all tool-based merchandise for all genders, all sizes. They've got mugs, they've got shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. I have one of the shirts myself that has the hashtag woodworker on it. And I also have a couple of the mugs that define what and who is a tool chick. So super excited with the merchandise that I have. I know that you will be satisfied as well. And also great discount for those of you who listen to the podcast. At checkout, if you enter the code MAKERMOM, you will get a 20% discount off any of the merchandise that you buy. So that's just toolmomstore.com. All right, let's head back into the action. Yeah, I'm like one of those people that like the very traditionalist woodworkers like think I'm just evil because I can't leave just wood color as wood color. It's just I didn't get to complete the program, but I took several courses at a woodworking program in Southern California, and I took like a wood finishing class, like 101 type thing, which I expected to be just kind of like, lacquers and polyurethanes and oil and, like the things I was used to learning about. But the teacher for the course, like, had her own business where she did all kinds of creative stuff, and a lot of all of it dealt with color. And so she had just like one small sliver of a section on like using dye to add color to wood. And I think I'm probably the only one who was in that class that was like so ecstatic in like coloring things. And I think I was ecstatic because, again, the only thing I knew about adding color to wood was paint. And I do feel like that is, to me, tends to be a sacrilege unless it's milk paint. Then I do have a love-hate relationship with milk paint. But because I do like I pick my wood a lot of times based on the grain shapes and flow. And so I want to be able to see that grain still. Even if I don't want it to be the color of wood, I still want to see like the wood grain. And so the fact of being able to add the dye and it not cover up like the grain, that you still see the grain, you're just essentially changing the color, was just something that I was like, I just fell in love with it. And I've since, like, I'll do different things and add color using different methods than just dye now. But I don't know, I'm one of those people too, though, that really enjoys like shocking somebody, in the sense of when they see the work, they're like, from a distance, they see just a bright color that brings them in. And then they go, that's wood. Like, just that, I don't know.
What else do you use besides the traditional, like the dyes, to make bright colors and make it stand out?
I've used like different kinds of alcohol inks, to add color to in certain spots. That's more like patterned type stuff. And then, like I said, I do actually like milk paint to a degree, but usually what I do is I water it down so much that it becomes a wash versus like it being like a solid paint on top. I'm not a big stain fan, because there again, it tends to obscure the grain beneath it. But I've studied different methods of dye, so I've tried to get back to where it makes sense. Going all the way back to like Native American ways of creating color pigments that they would use on fabric. It works very much the same way on wood because it is a fiber. And so
would you get into like plants and stuff like that? Like, like calendula and just different.
Using like different produce and stuff, and boiling it down and extracting, the color from it, and learning how to prepare the surface so that it will take and hold that color for a long time. I mean, the sun is still the enemy of any color on wood, but even natural wood.
As long as maybe it's an indoor piece, it would last a lot longer.
Yes. But I mean, I think some people are shocked to even understand that even when you leave wood just its own natural color, like the sun has a huge effect on that color. Like you can see it in people's kitchen cabinets if like part of the kitchen gets sun and the other part does not. Like as the years go on, you see a difference in color of those cabinets.
Especially cherry.
Yes.
Cherry is probably the worst.
Yes.
It's nothing worse. Like I have a couple of places that I'll have pieces in different galleries or whatever. But if I have a cherry table or a cherry anything, you specifically have to tell them you can't put anything on top of this because like as soon as you take it off, you're gonna have like a big ring. It's one of those things that just has to age on its own, and it's beautiful, but it's photosensitive for sure.
It is. So yeah,
I guess you could do that for color.
Yes.
You could maybe have different dye areas of the cherry at different stages.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Do you have the opportunity to source your lumber like from the island at all, or do you have to like ship it all in?
I usually go off island for a majority of the lumber that I work with. I prefer kiln-dried. We don't have any kiln-dried place here. Somebody does do a little bit of milling work, but it's one of those things that you just have to air dry it after, which in a location that's pretty dry for a couple of years.
Right.
And I don't really have that storage capability right now. In the beginning, when I first started, there's this book called Uncle Henry's. It's an odds and ends little book that comes out like every 2 weeks, and it's got everything from free, where you can go get some like someone's chickens that they don't want anymore, or like boxes. I don't know. It's like the randomest magazine pamphlet ever. But like there was building materials in it. So I didn't know much at the beginning. So I was like, oh, that's where I probably should source some of my hardwood from. So, I started sourcing, and at first I was buying just naturally air dried wood. And it could have been how it was dried, again, since I've just switched. But it had so much more warp and weft in the wood that it took a really long time to mill, and it was just got to a point where it really wasn't worth it. So I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a wood snob now because I went to the school, but they they were great, and like, all right, well, milled kiln-dried wood stays pretty after it's at a certain moisture level, it's pretty stable. You can have your odd piece that kind of like goes out of wonk once you clean it too much, but overall it's pretty stable. And it wasn't all weighty and wonky to begin with, so you could just kind of mill a lot faster and get to your finished product without you're cutting down on time. And that to me is really important because I'm one person. I don't have other people helping me. So, a really intense piece already costs enough without me having to spend, all that time milling, which, adds on electricity cost and blades and wear and tear and all, it all adds up. So I find that kiln-dried stuff is my friend. I sourced from a couple different places. I go down to Portland. There was a place that just closed. It was called Rugby, and I can't think of the place that it morphed to because I haven't been yet. But I go for things, certain woods there. There's a really great place, Days Hardwood in Freeport. Two really great guys kind of run it, and I actually source a lot of the sapele that I get. I go there for. And then
I say bless your soul for working with sapele. Not a fan.
I really like sapele. Sapele is like, I have, maybe a 4-foot board piece of Purple Heart that I use in like earrings and stuff. I don't usually work with it. It's a very decorative piece. I usually work with my domestics, aside from the sapele. I really like the warmth of it. I have a mirror right here that I've been working with, but it's just a really warm color. And then I did the maple inlay with that. That's what I usually, the piece that I really love is this bench I do. It's called Acadia. I usually just keep that in the sapele. It's just, I like working with it.
I like the color of it. I'm not gonna like lie, but that is the one wood that I got kiln-dried that I don't know what tree it came from, that no matter how many times I milled it to try to get to my dimension, I'd leave, come back the next day, and it was twisted every single time. Yes. And I was like, no, I am not touching this stuff ever again. Like, it was just so frustrating.
That is so funny because I find it to be a really stable wood.
It could be the trees that,
really wonky piece. I don't know. But anyway, so I like that. I really like working with walnut. I like my figured maples a lot. I try and do some contrasting work. So walnut and ash look really nice together. And if you're using the maple, the sapele looks really great, but so does cherry. I have a little bit of like flame birch, red and yellow. So mostly my palette, the rest of my palette besides that one is a domestic hardwood. And I prefer to, I'd prefer working with my domestics, but there are exceptions.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, in my shop, it's usually walnut. I don't have a ton of cherry, but it's usually walnut or maple. And that's just, it's easy to source. I try to go with a local sawmills when I can, and trying to use lumber that's been like, the tree was removed because it like was diseased or it was dying or whatever. Fell down in a windstorm, whatever may be the case. So I try to do that. I totally get what you're saying with air dried versus kiln dried. I usually go kiln dried if it's a matter of time and I need something very specific. But I also grab a lot of just like, freshly cut stuff that I'm going to stack and it's going to sit in my shop for a couple of years and dry.
It looks like you have a very nice big shop.
Yes. Well, I have my wall of wood, that is for sure. But a lot of that, it's just purchased through like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or whatever. And then I only have myself to blame if it warps. And that's because I didn't like stack and sticker it correctly. If it goes all crazy. But again, I'm also not building the traditional fine furniture for the majority of what I do. The majority of what I do, I'm carving. And so I usually only care that I can get one surface flat. That's all I care about. And so it doesn't matter as much to me, but I can totally see like when I'm going to be making pieces that are more traditional, like, I'm going to be making some tables for my sisters and stuff like that. Like, it's like, oh yeah, I have to like have lumber that, I have to process. And so I'm just going to go to a place that's like, that's a minimum of S2. If I can find some S3 stuff and it's nice and kiln dried, that's what I'm going to grab because it's going to save me time in the shop. Like, yeah, I get it.
For sure.
I am interested in the way you kind of stated it. And so I want to maybe it's just a clarification. Like when you talk about bringing some color in like a future, series, you kind of said it was different to you from fine furniture. So I'm curious. Like,
I know you are, but I'm not divulging until we get there. I'm sorry. We'll do another interview later.
Okay.
But I have to evolve the idea. It's like one of those things, like it's really been, I thought of it around Christmas time. It has nothing to do with Christmas, but it just kind of came in and I was mulling about it and then I've thought about it and I was like, well, that could be a lot of fun and it's something that I could do and it's not as intense as building like a really fine like table, something that I could do a little faster and not mass production, but definitely less of a one-off kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But let's do an interview in the future that's more like colorful. I'll wear some bright colors to match.
Okay. I got it. Are you the fine furniture maker? Like, are you using like no hardware are you doing all?
It's all traditional or contemporary joinery. Okay. So no fasteners, no screws, no nails, no nothing. I think if I had to make a joint stronger, if you had to use a particular like there are some metal dowels that can reinforce certain areas that might have a lot of pressure on them. I would think about it. but I haven't, the only piece, so at my website, there's a piece called Blue Heron. It was these bar stools, and they have a laminated curvature that supports the structure all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
I did have to use fasteners. I was going to glue or wedge them between so they're a pair of bar stools. So like the footrest area, I was going to wedge that between and glue it. But I ended up using brass fasteners instead, which were a pretty addition to the piece. They were functional in that it held the support system together. So if it needed to be, the rest of the chair, was obviously traditional or contemporary joinery methods, but that served a purpose. And I think in the long run, it allowed, because of the way that this curved piece went through, it needed to flex a little bit. And I think that allowed less rigidity in order to flex slightly.
Gotcha.
If it's a means to an end, then we'll go there.
Gotcha. You briefly said something about, when you worked for the cabinet makers, like being the only woman in that space. I'm just curious, like there, and then when you did go to the woodworking school, like, was it a similar space there? Were you the only or one of few women in that space as well?
So specified. So it wasn't a cabinetry shop. We built houses. We built full on houses, everything from the, framing, flooring, roofing, like build a house.
Okay.
Got it. So so I was on a full construction crew.
Okay.
And I was the only woman. I was still expected to do everything that the guys were. Maybe I'd carry a few less 2x because whatever, but I still had to run the framing gun. I still had to have a framing hammer to do I still had to do everything. As far as the furniture school, I mean, there are far less women no matter what. Any class, I think, I've taken, as I said, that 3-month class. I've taken 2-week classes and like a week-long course. In the shorter classes, there tends to be a couple more women. I was in the 3-month. That was the largest body of women they'd ever had in like a 3-month program. And I think there was 4 of us. And I think there was like 10 guys. So, no matter what, there's a lot more guys at all times. And, I think that, more women are learning. I think it's becoming a little bit more, not acceptable. I hate to say that, but more encouraged maybe. Just, why not learn this? I definitely, growing up, I might have painted something. I might have taken a roller and a brush about it, but I don't feel like I ever fixed anything. And that just wasn't in my wheelhouse. The first time I ever picked up a corded drill, the guy's like, just be worried, be really careful of the torque, you could break your wrist. And I was like, oh great, and then so I get really paranoid and I'm holding this like with a death grip, and eventually, but it's just one of the things I guess that could have happened. But there was a learning curve and becoming comfortable with tools. And I think by using all the construction tools like skill saw, these big like nail guns, like doing all of this and working with table saws that were not like, I have a saw stop. I have a saw stop, which basically, I don't know if people have seen it, but if you put a hot dog on there, the blade's supposed to stop and you're going to keep your hand. did not have any of that. Like,
nope. I've seen the saws at a construction site. It's like I wouldn't go near that with like no.
I had that experience, so I became really comfortable, not overly comfortable, still cautious, but you just were okay with working with that, which made going to a little bit more refined way of doing it that much easier.
Yeah. Were you uncomfortable? I mean, were you nervous at all going into those all male spaces at first?
So being on an island, no. Only once did I have to be like, I think they're sexually harassing me. Do you think you could say something? And they were teasing more, but that was like a one instance in like the 7 or 8 years that I did it. So being on an island, you really know each other, and that really didn't intimidate me. The tools intimidated me and whether I could do the work. And but I went in and they went in knowing that I didn't know. So starting with a clean slate,
right?
And I worked, as I said, for a couple different companies. So them knowing that I didn't have the experience and just being available to teach me was huge. I was actually more nervous about, I drive by the furniture school and I always wanted to go there, and it took me probably like 2 years, not even kidding you, for the gumption to go inside that, because I was like, what do I know? Like judging myself 9 ways to Sunday. Like, I don't have those skills. I don't have this. I'm a carpenter. What do I know? So getting the courage to actually go in and meet the instructors and voice that I really did want to learn that. And, I, in the end, had absolutely nothing to be worried about it. It's like most things in life. Most people are like really, especially at school, they want to teach you. Why else are they there? But I didn't feel intimidated in any of even going to that, because the first course I did was a beginner course. So I just felt like, okay, I'm a beginner. They're beginners too. No big deal. So
good. Now you're in a space where you're like you said, you're on an island by yourself, working by yourself. In that space, and you talked about missing kind of the collaborative, I guess, or just working near or around other artists and seeing their work and stuff like that, and getting back to in-person stuff. Do you think you would ever either open up your own practice to bring others in, or work in conjunction with other artists nearby?
I'd love to. So, all right, the bringing other people in is challenging because not everybody really wants to be a woodworker.
Right.
I mean, I'm living on an island with 350 other people.
Right.
Okay. So then you factor out the older people, and then the kids, and then the people that are, doing they work at the school, and then you factor out people that already have the other occupations and the carpenters and stuff. Yeah. And you're left with a really small segment of people that don't have really much interest in what I'm doing. I think, going forward, the collaborative work, I think when things start opening up again, because before COVID, there were a couple opportunities that I was, talking with other artists, and it's just bad timing all around. You know what I mean? So you really have to trust right now who you're working with, and you kind of have that repertoire. I mean, if you have a job, you've been working with other people who have that same respect mentality versus bringing in someone new, it's learning the ropes and everything. I think as this progresses and life opens up and just like slow steps, yes, I'm really excited to do more events, as I said, and those are going to start opening up. It's just a weird time that we are living in right now.
Yes.
Um,
Agreed.
I definitely thought about working at a bigger company. There's a couple of bigger furniture companies, you know, in a reasonable distance, or cabinetry shops.
Mhm.
I haven't gotten so far as to, you know, that hasn't outweighed other things.
Yeah.
You know, you always have to weigh the positive and the negatives. So I'm sure I'd learn a ton and it'd be a great experience, but it would be at the sacrifice of some other things that I maybe am not ready to do quite yet. I do want to keep evolving and growing this business. And, you know, it's hard because you have to only, like, you really have to balance the amount of work that you take on, because building something it takes the time. It takes
Yes.
a fair amount of time. It's not like I can just throw it together and it be like, voila, this is done.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's all kind of like a learning balance scenario.
Yeah. I feel like that's the struggle, like, though, of all of us who want to, like, make our living through creating, is the reality of creating things by hand is it takes time. And so at least the struggle I've had is that means that piece has to, like, be sold for a certain amount of money in order to make this, like, something I can actually live off of. And just, like, how do you find that clientele who's willing to, like you said, buy an investment piece, right? Like, to understand that what they're purchasing is not something that's meant to just be, like, thrown away 5 years down the line, but it's meant to be passed on, you know, for generations. Is like, that's how they're being built.
Well, okay. For me, my summer community likes custom things. And, you know, this goes along, that's a pro. But being here in the winter all by oneself is kind of a con. So, you know, one way is the other.
Yeah.
It's such as life, though.
So you talked about, do you have any shows coming up that you wanted to share about?
Well, today starts an exhibit at the Mesler Gallery at the Center for Furniture Craftsmanship. It's Maine Wood 2022. It's a juried show of fine woodworkers in all genres. So that's as I said, juried show that starts today. It goes on till April 6th.
Okay.
The bench that I did, or that was juried in, was Acadia. And then I'm part of the Smithsonian Fine Craft event in April. So looking forward to that. And then the only other show I'd probably have is here on the island in August. So, you know, when I get a chance to start doing more woodworking and less landscaping, I'll add more to that. Usually I do an autumn show, especially, you know, I usually do a Christmas event or like a November and a December. And that kind of fills in the whole year. I mean, more than that, it just seems like a lot.
Yeah.
But so those are the events, and then, you know, fill the custom orders and get a couple of pieces that I've been wanting to build done. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And are you doing any events or shows?
I am not. Well, actually, that's not true. I will be at least submitting a couple pieces to be juried and then hopefully selected for a show. I think it's supposed to be like end of March, early April timeframe in Kansas City. Yeah, so hopefully that will come up. But other than that, I'm in the process of I'm almost done with all the things I need to do to apply for grad school. So if I get in, that will start in August, and then I will have no life for 2 years. So that will be
Grad school for what?
to get my master's of fine art in 3D design / furniture design. So that's what
So
I
more
hope.
like computer aided design and everything.
Yes, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So it will be an adventure, but something I'm looking forward to. So knock on wood that I get accepted into the program, and then life will be just a different kind of crazy for a while.
Well, I wish you all the best, and I hope you get it.
Thank you. I want to land on like giving you the opportunity to let people know like how to find you, like on social media or online, to see your pieces and keep up with what you've got going on.
Great, thank you. So my website is ChristinaMVincent.com.
Okay.
And my social media handle on Instagram is Christina M. Vincent as well.
Perfect.
And I think actually on Facebook, it's Vincent and North Shore for some reason.
Okay.
But yeah, so any of those, if you went to the website, you could automatically link to the Instagram. I'm far more active on Instagram, and I kind of just shoot things over to Facebook.
Mhm.
So, follow if you're interested. I love the follow and support. It's always great. Sometimes, when you're a maker, and you're really kind of putting yourself out there and things that you want to build and things that you care about, I love to hear others' feedback, especially positive feedback, and
Right.
most of the time it really is. So that's awesome. And it kind of gives you, it just makes you know that people care about what you're doing, whether they're buying it or not. It's
Right.
so great.
Right. Exactly. Well, thank you for chatting today and sticking with me through the
Technical difficulties.
the technical difficulties. Yes. I appreciate
Well,
that.
I appreciate the interview, and thank you as well. And I look forward to seeing more of your stuff. And I really do hope that you get into grad school, because that would be awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So again, that was Christina Vincent. I will include the links on how you can follow along with her and see her work in the show notes for today's episode. Best places to find that is to look in the description for the episode on your podcast app. Or if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, you can check the description box down below. And lastly, you can head on over to freemanfurnishings.com/podcast and catch this episode as well as any of the past episodes. Again, be sure to follow along with the podcast over on Instagram at Crafting a Revolution. And since I mentioned that this gets seen on YouTube as well, in order to find the podcast on YouTube, go to my Freeman Furnishings channel, and you will find a playlist called Podcast, and it will include all the podcasts as long as the guests have okayed it with me for their video to be shared. And speaking of Freeman Furnishings, that is where you can find me when I am not making podcast episodes. You can find me designing and making furniture and home decor at freemanfurnishings.com. Also at Freeman Furnishings on all of the social media channels, active most frequently though on Instagram. All right, so this is a week where we have 2 new episodes. So I will see you again with another new episode on Friday. And in the meantime, as always, let's go craft a revolution.
She, her, them, they got something they want to say. Solution for the toxic masculinity.